Everyone. Good afternoon for some of you. It's Monday, May 18th. I'm gonna see, my internet appears to be a little bit unstable again this morning. Funny how you remember these things only right, you know, when you close your computer down on Friday, you forget things, and then Monday morning you go, oh, right, I was gonna check why my internet is not so great today. So let me see. I don't know if I can go bigger. We'll see. If that freezes for you, let me know. So good morning. Probably not going to have a lot of Canadians here today because it is a holiday here in Canada. Today is Victoria Day. So those of you in the United States, our big long weekend in Canada is this weekend. So Monday, Victoria Day, in celebration of Queen Victoria, who prior to Queen Elizabeth, the current queen, used to hold the record for the longest reign in the world in the United Kingdom. So 60 years, 63 years maybe. So we have a statutory holiday today, early in May. The May long weekend for us in Canada is Victoria Day. So I did program a webinar for today because I knew we would be finishing up the webinars, and I wanted to finish on a Friday, which is this Friday, as opposed to taking today off and then extending into next week. So thank you for joining us. Those of you who are here, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in the US, thank you. We are nearing the end of the webinar series. So we've had 30 webinars at this point. So we are reaching the end, and this Friday will be the last day for this version of POOLaide. And we will be doing something in the future. We're not disappearing completely. But for the moment, I'm tired, everybody's tired of webinars and web meetings, and it's a big commitment for everyone involved to be here 3 days a week. So thank you for being here. Thank you for voting with your presence by being here today. Let me know what you're up to in the chat box. It's nice to hear what's new. For me, I took Saturday, Sunday off, which was great, aside from writing our newsletter. And I'm just working on tomorrow, which is Tuesday. I have a certified pool operator course that I'm teaching. It is virtual. So I have students from, I'm trying to think, New Jersey, Alberta, a few different places in my virtual class starting tomorrow. And then I also have, the class tomorrow is Imperial, so it's geared towards US students. And then this weekend, I have a metric class that's geared towards my Canadians or my international pool people. So we'll be doing metric math in that certified pool operator course this weekend. So let me know. I see Christine here from Las Vegas. Let me know who's here, where you're from. If you've been lurking for lots of webinars and you haven't said hello, please don't be shy. Say hello. Let me know where you're from or what organization you represent. So that's what I'm doing this week. I have the certified pool operator course that I'm teaching. I'm teaching two. So tomorrow, Tuesday to Friday in the mornings. So before these webinars, I'll be getting up early and teaching those students. And then this weekend, I have my split class. So it's Saturday, Sunday for 2 weekends because we had a request for a weekend option, right? So if you have your day job Monday to Friday, or you have your kids to take care of Monday to Friday, I do have a weekend option this week. So Katie's here from Ottawa. Life Saving Society of Ontario is moving forward with online blended remote learning. As a teacher, you get to work on that committee. Awesome. Alberta has announced something similar. It's going to be only Life Saving Society delivery for now. So I know, for example, they are doing a trainer clinic and they are doing some advanced instructor courses, but it's only going to be staff from the provincial office that will be delivering those courses. So I, for example, as an accredited trainer, I'm not allowed to deliver them until they've moved through the trial period for quality control. So we'll see how that goes. I know we do have our annual general meeting coming up in a couple weeks, so we'll be interested to see what else is happening with online training. Let me know. I know in the United States, the American Red Cross, Stargardt Elite, lots of different organizations, Ellis and Associates have looked at some options for online. Certainly not all online, but some options to do either meetings, pre-course work, literature, so the things that students would have to read, coursework, that sort of thing. Welcome. I see Willie here from Virginia Beach. Would love to be at the beach right about now. Jennifer's here from Ohio. Alana from Brillion, Wisconsin. Kelly is from a naval base near San Diego, so welcome. My husband retired from the U.S. Army, so there's always kind of a pecking order in the different services. And I think if I had ever joined a service, it would be the Navy for sure. The water, love being out on the water. We had a very sad incident yesterday here in Canada. So our snowbirds, which is the Air Force's elite kind of show team of pilots, they were taking off from near Kamloops, British Columbia, headed back east towards their home base near Winnipeg, and two pilots ejected from a plane that was in a nosedive near Kamloops, and one did not survive, and the other one is quite injured. So it's not been a good start to the week, unfortunately. It's a tough week for everyone, right? COVID, don't even need to say it. May 18th, here we are, 2 months, 10 weeks in, and it's tough for everyone. So hopefully you had a good weekend. Hopefully you can find some optimism in your week this week. So today we're going to be talking virtual in-service. We've got two lovely ladies, Chelsea and Kristen, here from the University of North Texas. So we'll be starting that in about 15 minutes. Thank you for those of you who are here early. I don't have any show notes that I can give you as of yet. So I'm still 2 show notes behind. Friday's session with Lisa Reinders, I haven't had the opportunity to finish that yet. I did take the weekend off, which was really, really great. I'll be working on that this week. It might take me a couple days with the CPO classes. I still do have the inclusive aquatics inventory. So I was speaking with those speakers today, Kate and Sydney, just letting them know that the recording is still coming. I'm kind of a newbie when it comes to video editing. So I've been really struggling with getting that video edit done because the recorder kept recording on and on and on and on. It's a 12-hour video, over 2 gigabytes. And so it's been a challenge for me I've gone through several different softwares to try and edit that down. So that's still coming up. And then we've got our session today about in-service, our session on Wednesday about budgets, and then Friday will be our last session. So let me go ahead and put those registrations in the chat box. So if you haven't signed up, you can. So on Wednesday, we will have Eileen Kwan here. I worked with Eileen directly for 4 months and indirectly for several years. She will be talking about budget narratives. So having conversations and commitments to budgets after you go back to work for COVID and what kind of changes we might see there. That is coming up on Wednesday. And then Friday is our last session with me. So I will be doing most of the talking and be doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you add them to the Padlet. So I'm doing Q&A, but it helps me to know what questions you have for me to answer. So I'll be talking a little bit like this, but I'll also try and put together a couple slides with the questions or just some information if it's appropriate. So I would ask if you have questions for Friday that you please pop them into the anonymous website Padlet. So I'll pop that link into the chat box so I know what topics to cover. I don't know if the session will take a full hour. We'll see. It's hard to say. I probably will start a little bit later on Friday, so not do quite so much the pre-show since I am the show, and we'll get that going on Friday with some questions. And yeah, so if you have questions, please add them to the chat box. So I see our presenters here will be starting in about 10 minutes. So those of you that are just joining us, let us know. Oh, hello, ladies. Can't hear you, but we'll do you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, perfect. Awesome.
Chat
Hello.
box. Can you let us know that you can hear Kristen and Chelsea? Somebody in the chat box, that's helpful for us to know.
Awesome. Perfect. Hello, all. Happy Monday.
Yeah, really. Monday. Perfect. So we've got a few minutes. I was just talking about, I took the time over the weekend to take some time off, so I'm a little bit behind on show notes, but I've got all of the information up for everyone for the sessions coming up this week. So we've just got 3 sessions this week. So Chelsea and Kristen will be presenting in about 10 minutes. And then on Wednesday, we have a session on budgets. And on Friday, we have our last session with me. So those of you joining, it's really nice if you let our presenters know where you're from. We've got a few different names in the chat box already. We've got Virginia Beach, we've got Las Vegas, Ohio, Wisconsin, California.
Wow.
I see, yeah, good mix. Another Virginia Beach, Pennsylvania. So let us know where you're from, those of you joining the room.
Awesome.
I see here from Maryland. Jill's here from Ames, Iowa. Ben's here from Toronto. What did you ladies get up to this weekend? How's the weather in Texas?
Weather in Texas it's getting hot.
Yes.
Today we've got like a high, I think, of a 90, full sun. It's beautiful. We did have thunderstorms, and now it's just the rest of the week supposed to be getting hotter and just yeah. So we're ready for that again. Turning on the ACs, you know. So it's gorgeous out right now. What about y'all up there?
It's not that warm at all. So yesterday was beautiful. Yesterday, I want to say it was maybe 20 Celsius, which would be maybe like 80 Fahrenheit, maybe. Like, so if you're in the sun, you can maybe sweat a little, but it's not particularly hot. Today, it's gray, it's overcast, right? I've got my sweater on. It's maybe 70 today, maybe 65 in the wind. So definitely not the same at all. And what I was saying a little bit earlier is, so this is actually our big long weekend here in Canada. Today is Victoria Day. So you guys have Memorial Day next weekend. We have Victoria Day is usually the big kickoff to summer. And so it's really kind of sad not to be, because most people would be out, camping, hiking, grilling, visiting with family. And the pools would be open, but there's none of that, right? Because the national parks are not open, very few campgrounds are open, the weather is terrible, right? I had some Canadians ask, well, why are you doing a session on Victoria Day? And my logic was, it's not Victoria Day, it's like me in my house, so we may as well just make it a regular work day, for me anyway. But it's definitely been interesting this week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, this weather, particularly this coming up week, it's hot, humid, so you walk outside and you immediately start sweating. So that is Texas for you right there today.
No, that's good. We didn't live in Texas, but my husband worked at Fort Bliss in El Paso for a number of years. So we're in New Mexico. So I certainly remember that the year I lived there, it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter, right? You get 100, 105, 110, 120, right? You can't even quantify that kind of heat at that point. So
right. Every time we have winter, I always say, I'm ready for summer, I'm ready for the heat. And then it gets here, I'm like, okay, nope, I'm ready to go back to winter. So
well, and it's interesting because winter is so relative. In certain parts of Arizona and New Mexico, you do get snow and you do get that high altitude. But in certain parts of Texas, like winter is very much like 60s and 50s, and you run into people in parkas and little mittens. And for us in Canada, it's like you don't even pull out mittens until it's like -5, which is like 20 Fahrenheit, right? We don't even worry about it. Kind of go for it.
The differences.
Yeah, the differences, because I put on mittens, you know, when it gets down to like 65 here. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Since we've got you here a little bit early, do you ladies have in-service this week coming up with your staff? Or what?
Yes and no. We're actually wrapping it up because their school semester did wrap up, and so we're wrapping it up right now. And this in-service that we're particularly doing this week is going to be a all-together end of staff appreciation, where we're going to do like, you know, kind of superlatives for each other. Normally during the year we do this in person, but we didn't get the opportunity. But they asked for that, and so we'll be going through that and just talking through some of our fun memories and hearing them out and what moving forward, but to just kind of give them that appreciation side from us to them, and to let them all see each other as well. So that's our it's going to be more of a team building, team based approach this week. And then June for us will be a figuring out, you know, the reopening plans, because the hope is July 1. So at that point, it's going to be more focused on that whole aspect of the reopen plan from here. So,
yeah, it's tough. Do you have any students that are graduating that are done, or do you have mostly like sophomores, freshmen? What kind of ages do you have on staff?
Sure. Yes, we had freshmen up to seniors, and so we have 5 of them are graduating and have graduated. So that's tough under the circumstances. But for right now, we actually do have a pretty young staff retainment wise. Most of them started with us as freshmen. And so they're either going to be sophomore or junior this coming up year. So that's the chunk of them. And then during the normally run school year, we usually bring on at least 7 more freshmen, and then they keep on going through the program with us. So we like to see them through. We're sad that we didn't have the normal end of the year thing for our graduating seniors, but we're still doing what we can this week with them.
Yeah, no, that's tough. For those of you just joining us, you're not late. We will start in a few minutes. If you can let us know where you're from, that's helpful to your presenters today, Kristen and Chelsea. I see we have Debbie here from Seguin, Texas, Marilyn from Owen Sound, Utica, upstate New York, Glenn here from Hawaii, Brian from Hartford, Connecticut, Jane from West Hartford, Connecticut, Nikki's here from Olds, which is me in Alberta, Colorado, Oregon, Jody's here from Pima County, Tucson, Trinity from Coppell, Texas, Nicole from Chicago, Jerica from New Jersey, Melissa from Colorado, Pittsburgh. So there's a little bit of echo right now. I will be going off when ladies are presenting, so don't worry about any rebound. If you're hearing a little bit, you guys, that'll go away when I mute myself while they're presenting. So I will go ahead and put in the show notes for today, the link. That will have your PowerPoint slides.
Okay.
Sorry, not for you ladies, for the viewers. Don't worry. All good. I'm just going to open the link because I know some people like to open them in a sidebar.
Okay, perfect.
1 second. Okay, so those of you just joining us, I put the link in the chat box for the description for today's session that has our presenter bios, which I'll introduce shortly, as well as our presentation slide. And those of you who are coming in, just pop your location in the chat box. We'll be starting in 1 or 2 minutes. You see John's here from upstate New York, Andrew from West Virginia, lots of different states represented for today. Got Meg from Conroe, Texas, Jean from Acton, Massachusetts, Gretna from Toronto. So all over, Santa Cruz, California. Oh, John got a sticker, great. Anybody else, if you got a sticker in the mail, let me know in the chat box. I mailed out, I don't know, probably 120 stickers. So hopefully you'll start receiving them shortly. Renee from Wisconsin. Good. Stickers arriving. Good, good. Well, excellent. Okay, so reminder today, we've only got a couple sessions left. If you're just joining us, these webinars will be ending this week. So make sure if you'd like to join us on Wednesday or Friday, those are our last 2 sessions. Ladies, I'm going to have to use your mic for just a second. I'll do our introduction and then we'll get started.
Sure, sure.
Let me just put in the links. 1 second. Awesome. So Willie's asking about the stickers. Willie, we did sticker sign up. So if you're interested in getting a sticker, I will put the link in the chat box. It is sign up. Right, ladies, I'm just going to mute. I think we muted one, but not the other.
Oh, okay. Try.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, just for the rebound. Yeah, just for the moment. So I will put the sticker sign up in the chat box if you're interested in getting stickers. We're doing a sticker trade. If you have a sticker to send me back, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. I'll put in the link to the stickers and then I will start our introduction. Just 1 moment. I'm opening a different window to get that link. It's funny, you do something a gazillion times and then you don't do it for a while and you forget. So, you know what? I will pop that in the chat box in just a moment. I'm going to start my introduction and then I'll pull up the slides so our speakers can get started. So thank you everyone for being here today. It is Monday, May 18th, and welcome to the POOLaide webinars. We're just finishing up. Today is our last week. And so I'm excited today. We have presenters here to talk about virtual in-service. I'll introduce them in just a moment. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Katie Crysdale. I'm with Lakeview Aquatic Consultants near Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I started these webinars to try and bring the community, the aquatics community together during the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced a lot of our facilities to close and a lot of our staff to spread apart during the last 2 months. Now, I think we've experienced a lot in the last 2 months. We've gone from being, Zoom newbies to Zoom experts and webinar experts and conference calls, and everything that we used to do in the pool, we now do online, at least temporarily. So we're going on hiatus later this week, and all of the video recordings are still available on YouTube. All of the show notes will stay up on our website. Nothing is disappearing. Nothing's going behind a paywall. So please continue to reshare and watch any of the video recordings that are of interest to you. Add them to your playlists for now and in perpetuity. You can continue to use them as a resource for your different courses, whether you're teaching lifeguards, whether you're working with new staff. Everything is available free online. So I want to introduce our speakers today. The show notes for today are pinned in the chat box. There's a little blue bar. We've got 2 presenters today. We've got Chelsea, sorry, let me just pull up my window, 1 moment. We've got Kristen, Hinton, and Chelsea Kemp from the University of North Texas. These are the first presenters that I've actually asked and invited here that I don't personally know. But the interesting thing is they so impressed me with their pitch for this session that they were an easy group to say yes to. So I, in my role as a business, I often get pitches from different sponsors, suppliers, products, different people out there who send out requests to me via LinkedIn or email or what have you. And often they're really not very good. They're lazy, they're not professional, they haven't researched me, they haven't researched what I do. They're just sort of throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. And both Kristen and Chelsea sent in a proposal for this session, and I was so impressed with the way that they took the time to write a proper email and the correspondence on letterhead as a professional attachment. And it sounds like such a small thing, but it's really not. if I'm getting emails from, marketing coordinators at major pool brands and magazines that they can't be bothered to write an email, I mean, that really speaks to the degree to which aquatics, us lifeguards, aquatic professionals, we can really do better, and we can be better than everybody else out there. So I want to really acknowledge that these ladies so impressed me with their preparation, their organization, that I thought that they have great information to share as we look into the post-COVID world where in-service should continue to be online a little bit, right? We still need a pool, we still need team building, we still need to get together, but online may be appropriate 10% of the time, 20% of the time, who knows? So they're going to share today a little bit about what they've been doing and how they imagine doing this in the future. So I'm going to pull up their slides, and then if you ladies want to turn on your microphones, turn them back on. And we'll say a big welcome to Chelsea and Kristen.
Okay. Awesome. Hello. And I'd like to start off. Thank you again, Katie, for giving us this opportunity. Yes, I am Kristen, and this is Chelsea. And with the whole ordinance of COVID-19 and having these webinars and sitting in on them, I remember the first few webinars we sat in on, it was like, how do we go from here as aquatics professionals when safety is like our biggest thing for us, and how are we going to, move forward with virtual in-services and the whole repercussion of online training in the future. And it was one of those very profound moments. It's like, okay, we really have to sit down and think about this. And so I was able to reach out to our director, who's very supportive of the program. And, I told her, I was like, listen, we don't know what reopening is going to look like in the future, but when we do reopen, we want to make sure our staff are still up to date and still refreshed, and the retainment of all the skills that we practice in services are still very much fresh on their mind, and they're very capable to do so moving forward. And we were lucky enough that we got approved to do that, and we could compensate the staff for the in-service should they choose to do it, because, and I'm going to mention this now because we are not operational at the current moment. The in-services were not mandatory, but if they chose to do it, it would be compensated, and we moved forward from there. But it was, once we got approved, it was, okay, we need to sit down and we need to figure out our starting points, because this is going to be probably something we see in the future, because everything that we've gone through so far from the start of COVID-19 has been nonlinear, and it's continued to be nonlinear. It's going to obviously be changing from here on out. And so we would like to just share our take on it, how we started, things that have helped, things that we've realized that we need to adjust, and we hope to give some guidance to some other aquatics professionals who are seeking to do virtual in-services or online trainings, or at least giving you a foundational starting point, as we ended up having to navigate this through trial and error and just, figuring it out as we go, and constantly adjusting as this happens. But we've honed in on some of the most important things that worked for us and how we've moved from there, and we are transitioning further as well. So I hope that this can provide some information moving forward. So when we first sat down and we were talking about how do we start, where do we start, it was very important for us. And again, for any agency, certifying agency that you are as an aquatics professional under, to make sure you're very familiar with any types of new updates that they have been coming out with. I know we are an American Red Cross affiliated agency, so they had a COVID page, and they were constantly refreshing. So for us, our foundation started with our certifying agency, making sure each week we were checking that page, checking any types of new documents they uploaded as to far as what type of training, how we should move forward with it, some suggestions, some guidance, what that's going to look like, and applying it to, okay, this is what we want to do this week. These are our new foundational stepping stones. We need to apply it as well as moving forward. So when you start, the biggest thing was to look at your certifying agency, as well as any state or local laws. I know here in Texas, we do have our Texas Model Aquatics Health Code, and it does require us to do 1 hour of in-service per week. And then, so it was just staying fresh with that and then applying it there. So once we had that foundation set, it was, the next step was, okay, well, what are the means to reach out to our staff to get this information to them, to get these virtual in-services going. And if you're not familiar with the platforms now, I mean, as Katie said, we are very familiar with Zoom and WebEx and all those platforms. So we do have them listed. We have them listed because it was important for us to make it accessible to every one of our staff members. And so prior to starting the virtual in-services, we did reach out, we gave them a poll, and it was like, and we asked them, do you have the means to at least use one of these platforms that we can meet virtually? And if so, which is preferred? And for our staff, and keep in mind, we are a university setting, so everybody else's staff will be different, but it was important to reach out to them and ask them. But our staff being university and having to move all to online classes, the Zoom was the platform the university was already using, so they were very familiar with it, and that one seemed to be the most accessible for them, and they preferred Zoom. I will just want to highlight again, if you do choose to use Zoom, if that is the route you are going, make sure it is password protected, and you do have a meeting waiting room prior to it. Moving forth for our program, we will actually start using WebEx. It has a little more it offers a little more functionality and some things that you can do with it, as far as you can even type and write at the same time. And so moving forth, we will be using that platform. But for when we initially started, it was Zoom. And then some others listed out because they were mentioned. We have used Adobe a little bit here and there, and then email was a big correspondence for us as well to reach out to our staff for certain in-services. Because while we did virtual one-on-one where we'd Zoom in with each other and we did skill checks that way, we also were able to come up with fun interactive assignments. And so we had to make sure we corresponded the directions through an email, if not through the next platform, which we will talk about, is Google, because it was there's so many faucets with it. But once we established, we were using Zoom, we had to ask our staff as well, because we had to factor in everything changed because everybody went home. So some people are helping out with families, some people got second jobs, some people have other commitments going on now, their schedules all are rearranged. So it's very important for us as supervisors to offer the autonomy to pick up and decide when they could do their in-service per that week. And we extended our in-service. It started on a Sunday and ended on Saturdays, and we gave them multiple times within the week to sign up for. As opposed as when we are a fully operational facility, we have certain days where they have to be there. But this time it gave them the autonomy to do that, to move forth around their schedule. And that was something that was very important for us because we understand there was so much to factor in and adjust to. And, just find that familiarity and a new routine into that. And one thing that we had started using prior to the shutdown was it's a free app called youcanbook.me. It works for our facility specific. We used to schedule our swim lessons with it, our swim instructors would, but it was very applicable to us moving forth with the in-services. And I'm going to let Chelsea explain a little more on that because she was the one who brought this this app to us. And bear with us, please, because we do have to switch out into the links that we have provided for you so we can show you what it looks like on the staff side and what it would look like on the back end side of things. And we do understand there's other types of booking applications out there. This is just the one that worked for us, and it gives some highlights into it. And I'm just trying to screen share. And okay. Let me share that entire screen, share, and then let me see if. So moving forth, and please let me know if you can see this right now. This is what it would look like on your staff side. And I'm going to go ahead and let Chelsea take over.
So you would, so the link that we have up top is unityaquatics.youcanbook.me. This is a link that we can send out to our participants, and they click on, and this is what it looks like. So right now we have, I believe it's Monday and Thursday. We have Monday and Thursday blocked out. Say they want to sign up for a 10:30 slot right there. So we're going to pretend like we're signing up for it.
That one was booked already, so.
Okay, so this is what it would look like. They would enter their name, their email, or whatever information you require of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would book. Say you're not a robot.
Not a robot.
And then the bookie would get an email confirming their time, and the booker would also get an email confirming that time, so you're both aware of the mutual times. From the admin side, here, you can edit your settings. You can go to calendar time availability. This is all fully customizable, so that's what's really awesome about this. You're able to set how long you would like to have a meeting. So there's duration of 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think that it's very endless. You can do however long you would like to do in 30 minutes. You can do how long in advance they're able to book for a meeting and things like that, and booking questions.
Can customize it to what you just need required for when they do sign up, and any notifications. Mm-hmm. And it's just very much, it is a trial and error. So if you do go forth using this particular application, it's going to be you're going to have to make sure you're looking at it on your side from the back end side, but making sure it also goes through on the front end side of what they would see. But again, it's very customizable. It is free. It does work. It's worked very well for us and our facility. Again, it's going to be one of those things. What do you need as a supervisor? Okay. And then stop sharing. Oh, access the conference. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. And so those were some of the main ones. And then, but for this page right here with these platforms were the main ones we use specifically for virtual in-services. But for our in-services that have certain activities or assignments to it, or it's interactive, we use Google. And at the time when we first initially started, dissecting how we were going to execute all these in-services and all the ideas we had, it was like we had to stop and ask, what resources do we have as well, and how can we do this? And I knew Google, I mean everybody knows Google. I knew Google had Google Docs, Google Sheets. I've used it multiple times before. It allowed me to save it from a Google document to a Word document or Excel. It was very nice because it could export over very easily, and it allowed for multiple people to work on it at one time. And specifically when planning, when we were we were apart and working from home, it was nice because we could see each other working on the same document while Zooming at the same time. But specifically, we used the sheets to create our audit forms, which we use as a reference for when we fill our in-service skills out, especially for the virtual ones. And we also have done some interactive and collaborative stuff with Google Forms and Google Groups, which we're going to talk about. I would like to show you, again, I'm going to switch over to share my screen, what the audit form looked like for us in the sheets, and how we were using that. And we'll show you a filled out document at the end when we go down further into our presentation. What do you see? And so this was what we initially set up. It was nice because when we did our virtual in-service, I could act as the instructor and I could prompt when necessary and then guide if needed. And Chelsea was able to fill all this out on her side of things at the same time, being away from us. And then we could share it and look at it again later at a later date. And then we use Google Forms next, and that was to set up certain quizzes, and it could reach a variety of different people and test to different knowledge. And while I have my screen shared, I'd like to show you what that looked like. It did take some trial and error putting it together. Google has so many different resources and so many different faucets. Again, it's going to be something that works for you, what works for best. And just some trial and error and figuring it out. But it's pretty easy platform to work through. So we would pick a skill that we wanted to cover for the week. This one's spinal backboarding, extrication from water. And we would ask some specific questions that, we used our lifeguarding manuals for. And they have the option to short answer, or they have the option to multiple choice answer as well. And you get to set this up, and you can also set the point value. You can mark if it's required. The biggest benefit from using this in order to see where some of their skills are just based off of what they remember is when they respond, you get an email. You can also click when to stop accepting responses and when to go ahead and have responses. For the sake of our privacy of our staff, we can't show you, a full one with 27 answers, but we did use Chelsea as an example, and you can go through and you can see which questions they got right, which questions they got wrong, and it'll give you a summary as well where it breaks it down on the average. And then you can use this as an assessment to see what skills, what questions, were commonly missed. Is that a skill that you need to cover moving forward? Is that something that just wasn't very clear to them? It's more of a self-assessment tool as well for yourself as a supervisor. And so, going forth. Okay, and so that was what was nice about it, but we could also make it facility EAP specific. And so we could ask questions that pertain to our EAP that we want them to keep remembering their role and their place. If they're, on roaming, what is their role in the EAP? Where are they gonna be? If they're the assisting, what are they going to be doing? If where they're at in that. If they're on break, what's their role? And so we were able to apply our facility AP as well as our American Red Cross, topic into one document. And so it's refreshing. It's getting those gears turning and keeping that relevant as well. We're in the process currently right now on a new worksheet going through Google. We've done this in service in the past, which was nice because now we can use some of the other activities we've done in the past and start to transition it over to online. And so this was one of the ones that we've done. We will take unconscious choking and then obstructed airway, and we break it down into sections of the step, but we also are able to apply our EAP in here as well. Like at this point in our EAP, you should be doing this while also having our American Red Cross, guided scenario through it. We use checkpoints as well. Anything in a color as listed below besides the fill in the blank is going to be a prompting. It prompts them like, okay, if it's in this color, then this should be able to prompt you into the next part of that scenario. This is still a work in progress in Google, but it's one of those, we wanted to highlight it because it is something that you can transition over. If you have other activities, other fun activities you've done that you've taught some of these skills at Inservices, Google has been the best resource, and chances are they will have some type of platform to make those ends meet. So circling back to it, I just want to reference again the Google, what we have so far. And then lastly, Google also provided us with another platform, which this was one that we felt was very important to us because besides safety, the team building portion and the teamwork aspect of lifeguarding is very big because they have to work together, and we need them to be interactive and collaborative with each other as well when they're doing these in-services. So this next platform, which we talk about, and it is a Google-based one, was able to meet everything we wanted and our goal and our vision for that week.
So this would be our format for Google Groups. Like Kristen said, it's very teamwork oriented, so it's interactive and collaborative. So what we did for this specific in-service was we posed a question, we added a link for a video, we had them watch that video and then answer the questions. They would answer the question and then they would respond to their peer, and they created like a discussion thread. So they were still able to communicate with each other. And this was the first time I believe we did like a communicative staff to staff, peer to peer in-service. And I think they really enjoyed that they were able to discuss and talk with each other on the topic. And that was helpful in that way.
And what was interesting, we kept our instructions brief to the point. This is what's expected. They did it, and where we laid out the bare minimums of at least, you need to answer the 4 questions and respond to one another. What we found is they actually ended up responding to each other more, and it became a full-on discussion back and forth. They were discovering new ideas or hearing each other for things that they hadn't even thought about, and it just turned into something else. And they overall, they reached out and they're like, this was a good one, because, they did have that connection between and amongst each other like they would in person, even at an in-service. There are sometimes we will stop an in-service because a discussion or question was posed, and as opposed to having me and Chelsea guide it and let them find the answer, they were able to navigate it amongst them as a group. And that's something that was very important that we kept amongst our staff, because we want to keep that camaraderie and we want to keep that team building aspect of it. So the Google platforms are what we mainly use, again, for our assignments or anything that was not going to be virtually face-to-face. But for the virtual face-to-face ones, before we even conducted them, a bigger training aspect for us and something that we had to think about was, our staff don't have the equipment that they normally do at the facility. They don't have the visual stimuli. They don't have their tangible resources that they practice with. They don't have, some of the auditory things that would be going on. And it was one of those things we had to think, how can we make those ends meet? Instead of just having them verbalize what they would do, is there something we can do? And this is where we had to get creative. And moving on to our next slide, we're gonna be talking about some of the tools and resources we brainstormed and used to help give them, some tangible resources. And this is the one where we had to get creative, and it was very beneficial because it helped provide something visually, tangibly, auditory, honing in on the senses they would normally use. And so as you can see here, for our mannequin, I was fortunate enough that I was able to go ahead and take home, some resources prior to us shut down, but our staff didn't have that. Most of our staff left their pocket masks, their hip packs up at the facility. And so being able to think about what they would have at home, because we're at home, was there anything we could use? And thinking about it, thinking of our staff, and again, think of who your staff is. This is important. We have college age students, but there are other facilities who are working with high school students, or, have adults that are just doing this for what they're not in school. So it was just, this is our staff. So we had to think along the lines of them. So if you do start going forth with this, think of your staff specific. That was a big thing for us. And then the age as well. So for our mannequins, a pillow, that was easy, because what was nice about it is they could actually, compress. It shows the depth compression, and then it shows a full recoil, and it allows them to get the motions with it. And it also was helping prompt them into the next portion of whatever scenario they were working on at that point. Anything can be used as a head. I'm lucky enough, I had a soccer ball lying around, so I used a soccer ball. But I had one staff member who was like, I don't have that, but I have a balloon. And we said, perfect, great, use it. Just so they can have that tangible aspect. And it's also just helping them process, this would be my next step, and it's right in front of them. The infant was easy to simulate with, as you can see, we used a stuffed giraffe, something small. I know a lot of our staff specific have younger siblings, so that wasn't hard for them to obtain. Or if you have parents on staff and that have children, they might have something comparable that can simulate a smaller child. I would like to say at this moment, before we even went forth and asked, our staff to meet these requirements, we sent out a list and asked them, here's our pictures. This is what we are trying to do. Can you provide these types of resources to make your equipment? At the time, all of our staff were able to make the ends meet, and they're like, yes, I can do this. I have this at home. Like, this works for me perfectly. The AED we simulated, I used a binder in the picture shown, and I just drew a picture, a picture, and it was just, we practice on, that's our practice training AED. So I wanted to keep it as close to what we practice on in a given situation. And anything can be used for that. A book, a pasta box. It's one of those things, get creative, draw on it. Those are just little stickers from a Post-it note. We use Post-its as, the AED pads, and then we use headphones as the plug part. And but you can use anything from a power cord or whatever you have at home. For our pocket mask, specific to our facility, we use the Silrites, and we practice with the Silrites, but we also practice with the triangle mask, both adult and pediatric, in case, you know, something or someone arrives and their BBM has the triangle mask. Our staff know how to use every single one of them. So to simulate the pocket mask, we're like, well, we need something they can breathe through. We need something that can at least simulate the seals that they're going to be holding. And water bottles, we were sitting there and we were like, a water bottle would work perfectly. It's easy to cut open. You just cut around the seal. It allows them, you know, to make the seals that they would, how they would their mask. And, but it also gives them something to breathe in through and simulate that portion of it. The next few pieces of equipment took some, took a little more outside the box thinking. Our BBM, it was, okay, well, we need something that's gonna recoil, make a sound, and also simulate at least something similar to what they would be using with the BBM. And lotion bottle and shampoo bottles, empty or not, worked perfectly because you can squeeze them fully, and they also auditorily let out the same sound, and it recoils as well. And I'm going to share my screen one more time because I do have a video that will show you the similarities between it. In the video, I squeeze a lotion bottle twice so you can hear the sounds it's making, followed by in conjunction with the BBM, and how it was simulated and how it worked to our benefit for that simulation. Okay, and let's see. And here we go. Okay, so like I said, it did show it. It was very much, it allowed it to recoil. And now to thinking of like moving forward, and I know some of our, some of the new updates, it is going to go down to, like, you know, a one person working that BBM. So this also allowed them to practice with 2 pieces of equipment, and just get the feel for it. And it was, for them, and from the feedback we got from our staff, being able to have something tangible, even though it wasn't the real thing, helped them play it, or help them prompt themselves for the next portion of the scenario. I am going to play the video one more time just so to make sure everybody was able to see it. I know it's only like 20 seconds. So let me pull that up. And we'll go right here. Oops. Let me actually share it here. Okay. Okay. And then our gloves that we use, we asked our staff if they have winter gloves, and most of them did, and most of them have garden gloves or some type of glove that they could just practice with. I know one of them used dish gloves at one point because that's what they had, but it allowed them to simulate that motion when they would put it on. And if at the worst case they didn't have any gloves, we're like, okay, just simulate how you would, when you would in the scenario. Make sure you're verbally telling us that. And for us specifically too, we also provided them a link to an online copy of the lifeguard manual, just so they had a point of reference should they want to refresh on a skill, or if we needed to stop and like open up the book and be like, okay, right here's where it states how you would handle that and why. Because most of our lifeguarding manuals were left at our facility. We normally have printed copies for them readily available, but that's not something they could take home with them. So in the content of our virtual in-services, we followed a certain, because we had to make it within an hour, we followed a certain general like chunk. We'd start with our housekeeping, followed by whatever skills. And then I'll also talk about when we did a 4-person scenario.
So we just start with housekeeping, an overall check-in. Just their well-being. This time is just for them without talking about anything lifeguarding, just to see how they're doing. If they had any questions, we did our best to be transparent with them. And we acted as a resource mainly for them as well. We're, like we said, we're at a university, so we have all these resources, financial, social, academic if they needed it. So we acted as a resource for that, give them anything that they needed there.
And that it was important for us to also make sure we were staying very connected with them as well. As opposed to just like, all right, well, we're closed right now, but it's very much important for us to be able to still give them that very person-to-person interactions, because we do value them and they're very important. And it was just for them, that was also very beneficial because it let them know, okay, we matter. Like they're still very, like they're very much as concerned about this as we are. And for them too, it was just nice. They all said it was just nice to see each other. As a staff, and building, again, it all circles back to like the camaraderie and the development of your team and the growth and the success and how they interact even in the long term when we do come back.
Yeah. So after the check-in, we would move into our non-water skills. Specifically, maybe with first aid, we were very facility specific in terms. So we have an indoor pool. It's very unlikely that we're going to see a bee sting. So they, of course, know how to act in case of a bee sting, but we practice on something maybe like nosebleeds, which we will see quite more often than we would bee stings.
Common to our facility, we wanted to make sure we started with those first aid skills as opposed to just picking and choosing. We had to think, what are we seeing the most of, and to keep practicing that the most of. While we do put the other first aid skills in, we wanted to make sure, specifically during this time, we hit on what was like the most common to us. And then we'd follow it with normal AED, CPR, ventilations. But a big thing for us also is customer service. And that's a non-water skill that I think they still need to practice as much as handling when they do come back, because it's something that is 2 of our main objectives is customer service and safety. And those were just more like little scenarios we'd ask them to do, or we'd present them with the scenario and then they'd talk it through, or we'd act as a customer and be like, and we'd give them something challenging to work through and see how they were with that. And then we talk about it and go from there.
Yeah, so after the non-water skills, we move into water skills if we had any for that time. And we would go through a scenario with them from start to finish, and they would talk through it with us. So we present them with maybe an active drowner, but we describe it instead of actually telling them what the rescue was, and they'd go from start to finish. So recognize, activate your EAP, what kind of approach are you going to have, what kind of entry, and then they'd walk through.
And we'd ask them the whys behind each thing. That was important because, we don't have, let me preface, we did state, we're like, we understand you do not have the water right now. You're not practicing in the water. This is hard to place yourself in that situation, but we're going to set it up for you. And to do the water skills, it was very, very much guided discussion and a push-pull effort. And then we did navigate our way through a multiple responder scenario where we had 4 of them sign up for the same time. And we made sure that they had a list of equipment that they need, that they could, some of those homemade pieces, the items they had with them. And we would present them with one of the scenarios from our manual. And we'd instruct them, okay, you're the rescuing, okay, you're the assisting, okay, you're going to be on BVM and you're going to be on AED. We're going to prompt you to come in when necessary. But right now, you're going to have to verbalize. And this is the way we normally train anyways. They verbalize every single step. So this wasn't new to them. It was okay, if anything. So one would prompt each other. So if that someone was on compressions, it was that 29, 30, okay, then BVM needs to activate 2 breaths of air. And so the person on BVM would go breath 1, breath 2. Now I would go back into compressions. It'll be starting cycle 5. And the person on compressions would take over again. What was interesting about this is how we practice anyways, like they verbalize everything, but specifically going virtually, they had to, it was as if their listening skills were tuned in even more. And after, when we would ask them for feedback as well, because we value their feedback just as much, like what worked, what didn't, like what helped you. The overall consensus was like, this was so awesome because, like, yes, we had to listen even more than being on the pool deck or being in that visual stimulus. And it helped us slow down and realize, like, yes, while we are working through an emergency situation, that we do need to, like, really listen to each other as opposed to just going through the motions and making sure we're hearing everybody out. And so that's the way we navigate, or we first attempted it through the multiple response scenario. Moving forward, we'll probably do that again, just because it did have such a positive, feedback from them and being able to work as a team. And then let's see, moving on to our next slide, the content. Okay, it was execution and engagement. I did mention this before. This was not mandatory, but if they chose to complete it, it was compensated. Overall, we saw 80% of participation in our staff, and they loved it because it was something that was familiar. It was something they were already used to, and having to adjust to everything else going on, or in regards to the situation we're all under. They said it was nice because it gave them that sense of, like, consistency and familiarity, and it was normal to them. Prior to everything, we did clearly clarify and make sure we explained the expectations. We have specific standards we train to, and we meet those standards, and that's what's going to be expected. We kept our directions brief, short, to the point. But what was important for this, because we went virtually and there was a huge adjustment factor to it, to let them know to our staff that this was not going to be a pass-fail like in a normal audit we do during the normal operational season. They have 4 different audits we test them out of, and they do have to pass those. But this, in regards, because it was in service, was like, this is not pass-fail, but we want you to use this as a refresher for yourself and, kind of assess where you're at with your skills and how much you've retained and, how good you feel with that. And then we as our supervisor, as your supervisor, this is for us, this is a good time to take all the information we're gathering and apply it and self-assess ourselves on our end. Okay, what's working for us? Where's the strengths in their skills? Are there skills that we need to come back, like when we do reopen? Those are the first things we are going to touch on, because they seem to have, there seems to be some confusion, or they're not getting that part of it. So it's a very much evaluation tool on both ends, because at the end, we would ask them to self-evaluate using one of our forms on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you? Like, how did that feel? Like, let us know. And that comes with empathy into, and letting them know that we understand that this is completely different from what we've ever done, but this is probably going to happen more often in the future. This having to go virtually because of the situation has given us implications for the future, because, our in-services are mandatory. They don't make an in-service and they're off the schedule until they hit the next in-service and they go through another skills assessment. However, now moving forward, should someone have to miss an in-service for a family emergency, we do have a way to get an in-service that we're doing specifically for that week out to them, just in a different manner. So that was, I think, refreshing for both of us, knowing going forth, we do have the ability to do this. We do have the ability to online train. One thing that I would definitely want to hone in on is, when you are planning this out and moving forward with it, factor in the level of training that your staff is at. For us, this was an easy transition because we've already been training and doing some of these things. These are our standards. It's not out of routine in a sense, like what we've been expecting of them. It's not a new depth of practice. They've been practicing this way. But also facility specific, make sure it's age appropriate, the level of difficulty. So we're working with college age students. That's our audience. We had to make sure it was appropriate for them. It wasn't too hard. You want it to be doable, but you also want it to be challenging. And so if you're working with high school students, you also need to factor in that. Are they going to be able to sit down and do, a full-on quiz? Is that something they're going to work for them, or will completely one-on-one, face-to-face skills checks be something that you need to do? And then factoring the staff size. We have a staff size of roughly 30 to 35. It kind of fluctuates, but it was one of those, okay, planning it out. Do I have the time as a supervisor to make sure I can do 30 1-hour individual meetings, or can we do those for multiple, or those for staff at a time doing multiple response scenarios? Do we have the time and planning that out and executing it that way? Lastly, verbalization and vocalization has been the biggest key. Again, stating it, talking it through start to finish, making sure those steps are listed in sequential order to the way we practice, being consistent in that. Again, it's one of those you're going to have to adapt a lot, but prompt accordingly, guide if necessary, push and pull. That guided discovery was what has helped and what's worked with this. It's something we do, but it's even more critical to do it during this virtual online training because they don't have those other types of stimuli that they normally would. And then for our staff specific, if we were in a skills check virtually and they missed a step, but they realized it later on in the scenario, a lot of them would stop and they're like, I forgot to do this. And we would stop them and we'd ask them, okay, great. You realized it, like, awesome. Where should you have done it? And they could tell us where they should have done it and they could tell us the why behind it. We would stop that scenario and we'd restart it from the beginning, having them, practice again, just like we would in a normal in-service. You missed that step. We're starting over so you can apply that step. And then the simulating with the equipment we talked about was beneficial, very much so, because it allowed them to also get some type of stimuli. And so evaluating results.
So when it came to evaluating results, feedback, the sandwich method obviously helped the most. So positive and corrective. I like the way you did this, but maintain the standard here. Tell them how we can improve, and then reassess or reassert, like, but you did great doing this. We're going to show you an audit form. As a reassessment, we used the in-services for ourselves to be, okay, this is where we need to be when we get back. But also helped us give feedback back to them. So this, you see right here, is an audit form that we used. We took the name out because privacy, but this is how we would fill out a regular form with different scenarios that we had. So CPR, first aid, these are an in-service one-on-one that we had performed. The red means that they did not get the skill at all. Highlighted yellow means that they didn't get it at first, but they came back like, oh yeah, yes, I need to do this. And then the notes there on the side.
And then we can, this was something we can convert over to an Excel document, but this was nice because, so in the ADGA box, I can tell Chelsea did this one, so I was the instructor for this one. And so I can go back and read Chelsea's notes, whereas she can go back and read my notes. And what we were able to do at the end of it was compile all of the 30 that we had and go across and see which was any commonly missed step or skill. Anything missed in this column was absolutely, we did not want to see that. So, and some stuff over here, but specifically this is where we know, and we can use this as our starting point as to where we need to pick up off once we do go back, but also as a supervisor, just to use this as documentation, for our in-service, documenting that we did have in-service just as you normally would. And then this just it's more concrete information showing that we were able to, we did have it on this date and these are the participants. And so it helped with retention as well for evaluating where they were at with it, but having them self-evaluate themselves and and giving us that feedback. Because in our note sections, we could also put, they did state that, oh, I did forget this, but now that we've talked about it, I remember why. Or, oh yeah, completely got it all the way through. So it was just, it's an ebb and flow, give and pull. So in summary, we've touched on a lot of it about this, but when we factor in everything as the supervisors, it was more, we had to be adaptable. Make sure you have the level of accessibilities. You know, you're factoring in the other considerations your staff specific may have. The level of difficulty, not just for is the content too difficult for them, but can you as a supervisor feasibly, you know, turn it around, do it, and, you know, within like a week's time or within 2 weeks time, what that looks like, or is it too much so that it can't be done? So there was one in-service that we did, and it took way more planning than we had expected. And so we already had other in-services on backup, so we had to do those first. But moving forward, we would probably not do something that extensive again. And then just your time allotment, one thing that we definitely didn't plan on initially when we first did this was when we were scheduling out, you know, times to pick up. We scheduled the times back to back to back. So we actually didn't give each other enough time to even, like, you know, take care of basic human needs, like, you know, get a drink of water, eat some lunch. And moving forward, that was a learning experience for us. It's like, okay, now we're going to plan hour increments, but we're also going to give 30-minute breaks in between. That also allows, should we run into the case where we go overtime, we have that buffer there. So we don't have to like push meetings back. This is everything that we have had to consider, everything we've run into, problems and, you know, things that we've evaluated and where we've assessed ourselves and how we've used it and how we've implemented it. And moving forward, this is probably something we will be able to do, you know, because I mean, I know the American Red Cross just released their interim virtual skills training document and how to do it virtually, one-on-one, online, and having been able to do some of this with our staff already, we've realized, okay, this is something we can do, like this will be an easy transition, and we know how to set it up in that regards and moving forward. And then again, just using it in the future, should we have to fall back on it, we have it, it's there. So I hope this has been helpful in, you know, helping give some type of foundational starting point or just some ideas of what you can do. My biggest thing that I would like y'all to take away is please be creative with some of the things that you do. That's been the biggest help, and keep it person-centered. If you have any other questions or any questions at this point, I'd love to answer some. And here's our contact information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. I know there's lots and lots of questions, so we'll go through what I recorded as we went along. I want to say thank you for sharing all the resources that you have, because I know for me, for example, when we were talking about this session, I was thinking, okay, well, you know, we're all kind of doing this. Do we need a session on it? But I really love all the ideas that you've shared. I think you've really taken an innovative and creative perspective. Chat box, can you guys let me know, is it rebounding very badly when I talk through their microphone? Because I can put in an earbud. I might have to do that. I don't know how bad it is. Let me know in the chat box. Okay. So let's do this. 1 second. Okay. Is that... Well, that's going to be the same. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to stop talking, ladies. I'm going to have to type the questions for you in the chat. Or can you mute your mic? Let's do that. That's
sure, definitely.
All right, we'll do it a little bit slower this way. Sorry. Okay, so we'll just have to go back and forth so there's no rebound. I definitely, so just to finish my train of thought, I love that you ladies shared that profound moment where you were saying that in-service was not going to be linear. I think that's a huge piece that people are missing. So speaking for myself, when the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, which used to be the National Swimming Pool Foundation, they said we could do virtual certified pool operator courses back in March, I thought, I don't really want to teach online. I'm not an early adopter of technology, which I know will shock a lot of you guys who've been on these webinars. But as an instructor, I was not excited to teach online. And so I probably, as a pool manager, would have been one of those managers that didn't want to do online in-service and might have dragged my heels. And I love that you ladies kind of really jumped into it and thought, you know, what what ways can we do this, and how can we change it as we go, and how can we really look at building something that we can use in the future. I think that's a big distinguishing feature from other people who are just doing it for now. So I want to start first with, can you ladies introduce yourself a little bit in your organization, how many staff you have, and that little bit of background that's been asked in the chat box, and then how many people have attended Inservice, and a little bit about your facility.
Okay, so yes, so our facility is housed at the Pole Rec Center. We also share it with our swim team. So we do have a lap pool, and then we do have a leisure pool. So we do operate 2 indoor pools at the same time. On average, during the operational school year, we have anywhere between 30 to 37 staff members. During the summer, it's a little less. We see probably about 15 to 18. That's because our hours are reduced and we don't have as many programs going on during that time. But it is subject to change, kind of depending on the schedules of the students. So that's why I'm going to give you those ranges. I think at any given point, we could see up to 40 on our staff if need be. But we do have a very high retention rate with our staff. So we've been very lucky in the fact that they have come on and they have stayed with us. And so normally in a school year, we only maybe hire 3 at most. And then in the summertime, as people leave, we will hire a little bit more, but our retention rate has been good in the sense that we haven't had that struggle to have to find like a mass quantity of lifeguards in a small session. So, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I think I answered everything in that question. I hope I did.
So Kristen is the AD,
the assistant director, and this is, she is my graduate assistant, and she actually came on working kind of as more of the pool manager, and now has been able to transition into the GA role because my previous GA did graduate this year. So that's been an exciting change as well. But the staff are very familiar with her because she's been here in the last few months prior to leading up to her new role. Most of our staff are all students. However, we have hired outside but when necessary and if need be. So we have had some retirees come in and they take the lifeguard class, and then they're on staff and they thoroughly enjoy it, love it, and enjoy it as well. We have had that. We have had some high school students who are still currently in high school, but they needed a summer job, and at the time we were hiring outside. So it's not just student specific, but the majority of our staff is university students and student employment, because we are very much just student university based, and our rec center is, was built for the students from the students. So we like to make sure our students are fully staffed when we can.
Awesome. Okay, so my next question is, can you talk a little bit about how you selected the content? So you mentioned incidents that are common to the facility, other areas such as customer service, but there was a question earlier, did you grab from the American Red Cross manuals, or did you have an ongoing list prior to COVID? Like, where did you grab what to do?
Okay, awesome. Yes. So at the beginning of each year, we do sit down and we plan out a revolving schedule around the Red Cross manual on skills to hit, because it keeps us more organized that way, and make sure, okay, well, we did, spinal backboarding, a month and a half ago, so we probably will need to reevaluate it here. Or we did oxygen at this time, we'll probably need to reinsert it here. So we already had technically what skills we wanted to, where we were gonna, like what part of the month, what day, like what we were gonna do. So it was easy to look at the list that we had already. And yes, we did use our manual. We go through those skills. And that manual, I could probably recite it to you. We do use that manual very heavily, and we still rely on it very heavily, even when planning these out, because we want that standard to be met. The standard, while meeting the objectives, great, we want the standard. So we use it constantly, and we make sure they're using that standard, making sure they're having the correct verbiage, and they're familiarizing themselves with what we're expecting. And so we would use our manual, but then when we looked at our list for the remainder of the year, it was like, okay, well, that was a water skill, so we're gonna have to talk about it. let's see what was the land scale that we can also do in conjunction and focus more on that one. And we'll just talk about our water skill. And yes, facility specific, when it came to the first aid scenarios and customer services, like what do we run into a lot of? We do run into a lot of language barriers because our university is so diverse. And, so we prompted them with, that's something that was common to us. And how do you navigate that? How do you handle that? Or, just information generally regarding the pool. That's a lot of the questions we run into, what are our hours or just simple things. And we want to make sure that and now we don't have a script that they need to follow, but we do want to make sure they are being, gracious and courteous and they answer it appropriately and highlighting that factor. And so that's how we went about it that way. And then when thinking about the first aid scenarios, we do see a lot of nosebleeds. We do see a lot of foot scrapes. And so we did, that's important that we keep those practice. And then we'll also just add in one of the minor things that we like a bee sting. She mentioned earlier, we probably won't ever see that. Hopefully we don't. But we'll cover that. We'll add a tinier first aid part that we won't see as well in conjunction. So we're still making sure they're getting the refreshers on that as well. And then also in the lifeguard manual link that we provided, we also have them prior to whatever virtual in-service topic we're covering for that day. We give them the page numbers to reference so they can also refresh themselves as well.
Yeah, and I want to underscore for everybody who's watching, if you are new to virtual in-service, don't be afraid, but do prepare. It is a lot of work, as they've said repeatedly. Like, you do have to put in the time off screen. A lot of people don't realize that for every minute that you see us presenting, they've probably spent 10 minutes preparing and researching. So make sure that you build in that time. And I think you ladies have also shared, perhaps you were too ambitious sometimes and it didn't work out so well, but you learn as you go along. Mm-hmm. Can you ladies talk a bit about Google, like all of the forms and documents? Were you guys Google experts, or did you just really focus on how do we adapt what we want to do?
It was how are we going to do this? How do we adapt? Yeah. And it was, I wonder if there's something we can use. And so we're like, Google, hey, Google, how can I, make a platform where we can all talk to each other, a Q&A discussion. And then it was like, Google offers this. And so I was not familiar with the ins and outs of Google or just how beneficial it could be. I knew how to use Google Docs and Sheets because I had to back when I was in school, getting my master's, like that's a chunk of stuff that we use because it was easy to share and stuff. But I did not realize, nor did she realize, that just the depth and the broad scope that it offers and how encompassing it is. And chances are it does have it. You're just going to have to research it. And so it has still been very much a trial and error on the discussion board that we showed you of our Q&A. When we sent that out, because what's nice about it is you can share the document to make it just her and I are the collaborators. But when we do share it out, we can either share it as a link or we can send it to their email and then they have access to the link, but they don't have access to the administrator portion of it. But when we did that Q&A, this is where it was a learning experience. We didn't click something somewhere. And so some of our staff were like, we got the link, but we can't do anything. And exactly. So it was like, okay, good to know. That was another stressful point. It was like, make sure you go through it like all the way through the end, even on their side. And we thought we had done it all the way through. And so we had to go back at the time and we added an extension onto the time they needed to turn the in-service back over to us just because there was some technical difficulties. But we were able to figure it out. But it is a lot of playing around with some of them, depending how specific and how much stuff you want to put in there. For the quizzes and stuff, it was super simple. Mm-hmm. It was very easy. It was quicker to do. So that's why there's some things that do take a lot more planning. And that was a learning curve for us.
I think we've all learned that at this stage, that we thought we did everything and we didn't. But I just want to stress to everyone, if you don't know Google Forms or Google Documents, just spend some time. Google has their academy. There's videos on YouTube. just search around. Google can do pretty much everything. I made a map recently for all the pools I'd been to. There's lots of different tools. And I think this leads to the next question from Ron, which is, how do you see yourself using this in the future? So you mentioned a staff member missing in service, but you know, what percentage do you think you would incorporate the activities you developed in the future?
I think it's going to be probably for right now, you know, 75% virtually and 25% in person, depending on what we actually have to do. Because I do understand, you know, and depending again on our state and local laws and the guidelines set forth by our certifying agency, the in-water skills portion, how that's managed. We have talked about getting just a full-size mannequin, you know, and having one person come in at a time and performing the skills on that mannequin. And then we watch from afar in that aspect. So we've brainstormed that as well, but so we plan to, this is something that's going to be very much part of the curriculum moving here on out. We're redoing our manuals right now to implement the social distancing. And as far as in-services go, especially when we reopen, because it is a state law that you do have to have those in-services, this is one way we're going to be able to implement it and make sure that they get it done and get that hour in each week. So moving forward, it's going to be implemented at least 3 out of the 4 weeks of the month. And but it's also nice now that they will now, instead of having to, because we used to, you know, you had Sundays and Tuesdays to come into in-service. That was it. You either had to be there, you didn't. This type of virtual in-service will be a little easier on them as well, because we can still allow for that full week to happen and they pick that time again. And so as long as it works in accordance to us, and we will set some more parameters, you know, maybe we do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday from this time to this time, you sign up for it then, because that's when we're available. But moving forth, this is going to be part of our program. And specifically with now virtual trainings happening, this also just gives us an insight of how to and what to expect, and now what we need to plan and how we need to make our classroom accommodating to this, and getting that set forth.
Well, and I think everything you've developed, maybe if we're imagining 2021, maybe you do one in-service every, you know, 3 months, you know, a couple a year that are virtual. You can still pull out everything you've developed, and it can be kind of a throwback maybe at that point, or it's a novelty, or maybe you don't have snowstorms in Texas, but that's a big one in Canada. If you have a snowstorm and in-service gets canceled, right, you could throw it online, and anything you've developed now works again in the future.
Most definitely. We've definitely, here where we're our physical location, we run into tornadoes a lot. So we've had that, we've had, you know, to cancel an in-service for one night, and because we were under a tornado warning and we were sheltering in place, and then it was we were scrambling after that to figure out when everybody could come in to make that in-service, because I can't have them on stand unless they actually were participating in that weekly in-service. So this also will help alleviate, you know, weather-related in the future if that should happen, or again, if an emergency should happen and someone needs to go home because they can't be there. This gives us just more options, as well as from a supervisor's standpoint, while still making sure they have the means to do it.
So we'll ask Chelsea and Kristen, there was some questions in the chat box earlier, if you consider sharing 1 or 2 examples of your documents in a shared Google folder so people can take one as an example, something to think about. We can add that to the show notes, because I know people are saying that the formatting looks so pretty on yours versus mine. Mine just looks like lines. And the great thing, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry I interrupted, but yes, we would absolutely love to share it, for sure. And please, if you can use it as a resource, we would love it if y'all did, because if you also somehow, you know, evaluate it and critique it and make it, you know, better, we would like to also share it that way. Again, this is another way for us as aquatics professionals to come together and be that resource for each other. So yes, let us help you in any way we can too.
Yeah, and I think that's so great if we do it through Google, in the sense of if you ladies put it in a folder, whatever examples you're willing to share, and then we'll put the link on the show notes. And then that kind of forces everybody a little bit to go into Google Forms, Google Documents. If they haven't used it before, they can grab a copy, save it to their drive, and then try it in the future, even if they're not doing it now.
Absolutely.
What about tech issues? There were questions. You don't have too many older staff, as I understand it, or do you have any retirees right now? And how did they manage with the tech of this?
So we did not have, currently right now we do have all students at this current moment. So we did not have to navigate that aspect of it. But we did have tech issues. I will say that there was one particular virtual in-service where it kept glitching in and out. And this is why we say to allot for, more time frame. And at that point, what we did is we had to, when we could, we stopped our presentation or stopped the virtual, like face-to-face. I messaged our staff members like, hey, this isn't working. Is there any way we can hop onto this different platform and maybe that'll work better? Or can you allow me to move to a different room? Or let's reschedule this. Does that work for you? And we ended up just switching to a different, we went from Zoom to FaceTime. All our staff have our numbers, and she happened to have an Apple phone that allowed us to do FaceTime. And for some reason, the connection was better that way. So it was just, again, adapting on the spot and being, as understanding as possible. I get it. It's not always going to work. But it's just and we plan for that. We plan for those tech issues and plan for, okay, let's try a different platform first, or okay, let's reconvene at a later date when maybe this isn't a factor into it. So.
Yeah, and there's just sometimes no way to know what's going to work and what's not. And so I love that you provided lots of different options. And I would encourage everyone to think. So I don't use Apple products, but for example, Facebook just announced their Facebook Rooms last week. That's for up to 8 people. Google Hangouts, Google Meetups, right? Sometimes you just have to say, okay, or Skype even, right? Skype was really big when I went to graduate school overseas 10 years ago. I still have a Skype account, even though I don't use it too often. Can you briefly talk through the mechanics about the when you did the small group for staff doing a situation? Can you explain a little bit more about how that worked as an attendee or like to evaluate?
Sure. Okay, so our audit form looked very similar to the one that we did show you. But it was, okay, do they pass as a team or do they pass as an individual? So we had to go back and forth between those two. They would sign in, and we would read them one of the 6 scenarios that is provided in the American Red Cross manual that they were going to train out of, and I would assign them each a role. You're going to be the one who's responding. You're going to be the sustain. You're going to be the AED. You're going to be the BVM. And particularly if it was, a child, a passive submerged child, you pulled out of the water, we would set that up prior to, and we're like, okay, this happened. You're at this point in the scenario because we don't have that water component of it. They can't perform that. And then I would let whoever's starting to take off, and we laid it out. We're like, if you are, the one who's going to be doing you're checking for responsiveness, you're calling for 911, you're doing your primary assessment, you need to verbally tell me that's what you're doing, and then show me. And you're going to tell me on screen, yes. Okay. And I want you to tell me, I'm going to do my primary assessment now. So I'm going to open up that airway by putting one hand on the forehead and lifting that chin. Then I'm going to take my fingers and feel the carotid. Then I'm going to look towards the chest, and I'm going to make sure they're breathing while counting out loud: 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. If they got to that point, that's when I would prompt them accordingly and be like, okay, okay, good. Now what's your next step? Then they would ask me, okay, well, after that primary assessment, I was like, they're not breathing, they have no pulse. So to them, and then they had to stop. They're like, well, I just pulled them from the water, so I need to do my 2 initial rescue breaths. So they would do their 2 initial, then they would tell me I'm moving into CPR at this point. From CPR, that point, I was like, okay, you're starting CPR, your assisting's there to help. They're going to take over on the, the ventilation aspect of it. So the responding would do the cycle 1 of 30 compressions. At 30, they then would tell me, okay, I just finished 30. We would be doing 2 ventilations at this point. My assisting's going to do it. And so assisting would then say, activating 2 ventilations, and then they do breath 1, breath 2. then they would state, okay, now I would go back into cycle 2 of CPR, 30 compressions. Then that person who was on CPR would take over and do that. And then I would instruct, I'd be like, okay, AED and BVM arrive. And then they'd have to work through that and navigate and talk to each other in the steps that they would. And they were prompting each other at that point and how the scenario would play out. And unless the scenario went completely not the way it was supposed to, I wouldn't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I would let them talk it all the way through. And then once they were done, we would sit there and we would discuss it and be, okay, that's great. You did this. Why did you do this? At this point, so-and-so said this, and that changed your course of action. And you listened. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, they were right. And it just required me to listen. And then we would do the same scenario. We would just switch roles at that point and have everybody start at a different place. So they got to practice with each piece of equipment like we would in a normal in-service. That's how we navigated that one. That one's still very much like, there was still, we did it and we're still like, okay, these were our strengths. This is what worked. How can we make it, a little more where it flows? But our staff that's another thing. Our staff was very willing to try this stuff with us and they were ready to try it. And they understood just as much like, we are also navigating how to do this as well. So please work with us. And they were very much willing to, but it was very, and that's something we already do in our facility is we already have them vocalize every step. So that wasn't new. It was just more of not being present and all on the same mannequin. So that's where the listening really took apart for them.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because Debbie mentioned in the comments how it really does break down silos of communication, or she said communication. And for me, I thought silos, because wouldn't it be cool, even if it was a listening activity, if people had to close their eyes or, just even listening and focusing on, okay, well, we can't train in the pool right now, but we can train other skills, right? And so that's really the silver lining of the online, the virtual is you can't do what you wanted, but you can improve some things about your staff. You just have to really dial in and figure out what that is and be creative about how you're going to do it. I put in the chat box, I'm sure we could all share lots of other great websites, Kahoot, Padlet, great apps you can get on your phone, right, to download, select names randomly, skills randomly, and make it kind of like a fun game show. There's lots that you can do, but you also don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right. I love this realization. So as you ladies were talking, I was thinking, well, it would be great. How many of us are leading in service as one person? But when you guys tag team it, maybe Kristen, you're leading the activity, but then Chelsea's actually documenting what she sees or who's doing what, like you said, in live time in the form. And that leads to a question we had. How do you guys file the documents for staff? Is it all of these rubrics, or what were you doing to kind of keep that info for when you go back into the pool? Who needs to actually work on CPR? Who needs to?
That is a great question. And so already in our facility, we have specific staff files that once they're hired, they have their own file. And so that's what's nice about Google Docs is I can download it into an Excel document and then print those sheets out individually and file it into each of their staff files. But we also, between Chelsea and I, have an in-service and an orientation specific folder that breaks it down to what happened on what days, who met these skills and who needs to be tested. And we also have a document that just, it's more simplified as to, did they get this? Is this something they need to work on? And then we go across and we can see exactly where the majority of the numbers lie. So that's how we've broken it down. And that's also something what we do at our facility is we do 4 mandatory audits every single semester, and it's a CPR audit, it's a first aid audit, it's a pool takeover audit, and it's a tube drop audit. So they already know to expect that at any given point they can be audited, and they have to perform whatever scenario we throw at them and the skills, no matter where they're at. If it's a tube drop, they have to recognize that tube in the water within that 30 seconds and get to it and retrieve it. And it's a full on, they activate that EAP. So our guards are also coming out. So it's also testing to make sure they're taking over that pool coverage. And the CPR audit at any point. I mean, I've had some staff walking back from the bathroom, and it's required, you know, that they, even when they go to the bathroom and they're coming back from it, they have their whistle, they have their hip packs on, and I've stopped them and be like, and I've dropped a mannequin in front of them, like, this is your scenario. He just collapsed. How do you handle it? And then our pool takeover, we have had them, you know, we'll have someone come and take over coverage and surveillance of the pool. We'll pull them down, you know, task them to turn around, and we ask them how many people are in the pool and can you identify where they're at in the pool. And so we've already had these audits before, and so we already have that tracking documentation, and it goes straight into their file. And then we have a form on our side. Did they pass their audit? Did they not pass their audit? And what does that mean? And then how do we handle it from there? And so this is just another, the Google Docs allows us to download it and export it and then print it out individually, and then also apply it into our bigger database, I guess you could say.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because if we look ahead to, let's say, 2021 and our pools are normal, let's say, I mean, we all, I'm sure many of us who worked from home for the first time realize, you know, there are some things we just don't need to be in the office for. And so maybe there's certain types of skills or activities, or, you know, talking through a lesson plan or a mini leadership session, you're teaching a mini portion of a class. There's nothing to say we have to bring everyone back to the pool in February to see that. You could do mini teaching, peer teaching online to the degree that that's appropriate. And so I think just for everyone who's still here, if you have more questions for Chelsea and Kristen, please pop them in the chat box. But I really want to encourage you to be inspired by what you've seen today and think like it's an investment in your facility's future. It's not just now, right? Yeah. So if you've been hesitant about jumping on the bandwagon, think about, okay, well, maybe I can't use it now. Maybe I can't pay my staff now, but how can we use it in the future, right? How can we really attack a problem that we've had, whether it's customer service or PR or even, you know, knowledge, you know, videos. We haven't even talked about videos, but playing videos from YouTube or from other sources can be helpful as well. Like there's endless resources you guys could share with each other in the chat box. I'll just there's a few people typing, so if you have questions, please add them to the chat box. I also want to highlight, how do you ladies normally do your scheduling when you're open? Do you do online scheduling, and how did that tie into this?
In regards to in-services, I want to make sure.
Or did it duplicate what you were doing, connecting with your staff, or were you able to move everything to the virtual meetings that you were then normally doing online?
So scheduling wise, normally we use an app called Windowwork, and so scheduling wise, we used to use that, and it was just like, I would go ahead and set up, you know, we have 15 slots available for this service on this day and 15 on this day. Y'all have to go pick up, you know, and if you don't get that day, then sorry, you're on this day. But the reason we had to highlight the You Can Book .me is because we did have to change it in that aspect, because with that application, it allowed them to pick it up all over the place and or cancel, and I didn't have to approve it, and I didn't have to approve them picking it up, and so it kind of mitigated that portion of it, and the scheduling aspect of that. So that's why that one was more user friendly for us on that side of things.
Okay. And yeah, so I guess my question, so everybody who's out there thinking, just generally when you're looking at long-term with online, make sure that you're not duplicating. So for me, I used to use When2Work as well. And so there's a lot of great features that your scheduling software might have. Don't worry about necessarily using a Google Doc. There may be some features in your software. Also consider if there's a message board or a shift or group text. So don't be afraid to investigate the features that you've got. There's a question from Sherry or anybody really. Does anyone have any tips for creating flowcharts or EAP, making them pretty? Have you ladies done anything like that with Google or any other software that you like?
For our EAP, it is just a page document, and it is listed out. This is what you're doing. This is what needs to be done. It's recognize, activate, it breaks it down. If you're in the leisure pool, you need to hit the stop button. It has the necessary steps to it. Their manuals, they all have a manual that has that as well. We're actually currently in the process of redoing our manuals, like I said. So, but it is a flow chart, and it starts from right when the activation happens, you know, backup coverage, it states the who needs to be doing what. We prior to my last GA, and I actually sat down and made that EAP facility specific when we first both got there and collaborated, like, this is what needs to happen for this pool. This is what needs to happen for this pool. At this point, this is when this needs to. So that took some time. I don't have any, and it doesn't look as pretty as I would like it to, but I mean, with the reevaluation process, it's going to be a little more, I feel like ours has a lot of information on it, which is great. It should, but I would like to get it to where it's not something like they might have to stand and like super read all the way through. But that's why we also train and test on it, that it's memory now, and they do have their manual test every single semester, and that's part of it. They need to be able to list it out. So.
Yeah, so Sherry, I've shared in the chat box, I like Canva. It's not so great for flowcharts, but even if you Google flowcharts, Sherry, I know I've created a few flowcharts over the years where I just used the free trial for a couple days, created my flowcharts, and didn't pay for anything. So Googling, there's tons of software available to help you with that. So I would try playing around with the free versions before committing to anything. I think we'll leave it there. I don't see any other questions. So I do want to say thank you to Chelsea and Kristen from the University of North Texas. Thank you so much for your time, all of the amazing resources. The show notes are pinned in the chat box. I'll pin them again so you guys can look there. We'll put together some links to a Google Drive with some of their resources that they'd like to share. And I want to encourage you to be inspired. I'm just trying to scroll back 1 second to pin the show notes. Inspired for everything that they shared with us today.
And we'd like to extend our thank you to you as well for giving us this opportunity. So thank you again, and thank you again for putting on these webinars, because they have been super beneficial and helpful for us, and the connection and all the information we've gathered through that as well. So again, thank you for your time as well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a passion project, and it's good. I'm really, really thrilled that it's connected lots of different people for lots of different reasons and lots of different ways, right? And it's interesting. Somebody was asking me the other day, well, how many people have watched the webinars? How many people tune in? And it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality, right? The information that you ladies shared today is very innovative compared to what I think a lot of people are doing. And just because we only, let's say, had 120 people here today, if that impacts 50 people or 10 people in ways that is transformational to our guards and our teams, I mean, that's all that matters, right? We don't need 600 people. That's not going to give us a better feeling or a gold star. Right. So thank you for your time, and thank you so much for sharing your ideas, because that's another big thing is people are not always willing to share. And so that really helps.
So, absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll say thank you to Kristen and Chelsea. I'll make the last couple announcements. So you ladies can turn off your mic and camera. And then we won't have any rebound, hopefully, and my internet is still not great, so I apologize for that. So reminder, we have 2 more shows after today. I will put the links in the chat box. If you're looking for sticker sign up, that sticker sign up is in the chat box right now. Ironically, it is a Google form. Sessions, Wednesday, we have a session on budgets. So it's not how to develop a budget, it's how to really have conversations and commitments surrounding budget narratives after COVID. This is with Eileen Kwan. I worked for her for 4 months directly and several years indirectly, and she's really, really wonderful. It's not a finance session. It's really more of a theoretical discussion about budgets, which I know is hard to understand what that means, but Eileen is an excellent presenter, so just trust me that her session will be great. Friday is the last live session with me. Then we're going on hiatus until later this summer. POOLaide will be taking a slightly different form in the future. Make sure if there's any sessions that you haven't seen, everything is available on YouTube. Everything is free. All of the show notes are still on our website. Those are not going anywhere. So you can go to the main landing page on our website to get all of the information that you need about that. If you are looking for our weekly newsletter, so our weekly newsletter went out yesterday. If you missed it, it'll be up on our Facebook page later tonight. We were talking about the brain drain in aquatics a little bit and how to address that. So let me pop in our weekly newsletter sign up. Please make sure that you confirm if you do sign up. There is a 2-stage authentication, so you need to confirm your subscription to the newsletter. And if you missed yesterday's newsletter, it will be up on our Facebook page later tonight. In about, I think, 5 or 6 hours, I have it posted to come out tonight. Let me lastly post the link to the main page for all of the POOLaide webinars. That is I'm just scrolling through my links. All of that information. Everything is in the chat box, so I'll be on here for another minute or two. If you have questions, I'm here. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for spending Monday, May 18th with us. Happy Victoria Day, Canadians, especially if you were here. Have a great rest of your day. I'm just popping in that last link. This is for all of the show notes, for all of the sessions, if you've missed any of them. I still need to post Friday's recording. Today's recording will be up later this week. I'm teaching certified pool operator courses, so it will take me a little bit longer. And the inclusive aquatics inventory is still missing the recording. I'm still working on edits of that just based on some tech issues. Okay, so thank you so much for being here today. Have a great rest of your day and get outside and stretch and take that lifestyle break the ladies mentioned, right? Don't do everything back to back. Take a few minutes for yourself, stretch, have some lunch, get outside, and we'll see you on Wednesday if you're here on Wednesday. Bye-bye.